Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to bake up our homemade sourdough bagels. We made the dough yesterday during one of our streams, and they are ready for the boil and bake off. Then we're going to make some bagel sandwiches with them, and we're going to make cookies 2 ways. And we're going to prep a focaccia for dinner tonight. So I've got my water boiling here, and we are going to add in about a tablespoon or so of honey. And so this is kind of called a honey boil for our bagels. There we go. And then I'm just going to give this a good stir. And this will help give you that really nice crust on our bagel, like the shiny little crust on it. And we're going to boil each bagel for about 30 seconds on each side. So I've got my honey in here, and I have my heat up nice. And so this morning, I shaped these in the bagel shape. As you can see, their little indentations have already closed up. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to drop them into our boiling water. And we are going to boil them for about 30 seconds on each side.
So similar to pretzels?
Similar to pretzels, yes. Let's see if I can get a third one in there. Nope. Should have done a wider, bigger pot. Okay. So we have about, and this, you can technically bake up your bagels without boiling them. But if you do, they're just not going to have that good thick crust on them. They're not going to be as good and flavorful because that keeps the moisture in. So, of course, always want to boil them. Otherwise, you really just have made a roll with a hole in the middle. And we, so like when we do our pretzels, we do it in a baking soda bath. This is in a honey bath. There we go. Whoa.
Did you have a question? Do you have to bake them after this?
Yes. So we'll bake them after it for about 20 to 25 minutes. And that gets it, like, this is just to give you, to develop that crust on the outside. It's not like actually doing any of the cooking things. So with bagels, you know how you have like a chewier crust on it? That comes from the boiling of it. It just kind of, it cooks the outside really quickly. And then when we pop it in the oven, it will do the rest of the baking for you. Now, these are sourdough. These are like a true sourdough bagel. So there's no yeast in it. When the bagels you buy from the grocery store have yeast in them. So it will have like your sourdough taste like your bread and whatnot. And it'll be nice and bubbly and delicious inside. And I'm really excited for our sandwiches today because they'll be hot out of the oven. And nothing's better than a freshly baked bagel. We're going to do a couple of different seasonings on it. We're going to do an everything bagel seasoning, of course. And then we're going to do an Italian herbs and cheese seasoning. We're going to keep one plain, and then we're going to do a cinnamon kind of crunch ones.
You have a question. Can you air fry them?
You know what? I'm assuming you could. I've never done it with the air fryer before. You do cook these at 425, so you cook them at a higher heat. So I don't see why not. Air fryer just is essentially like a convection break. It gives you that high heat and with the air blowing around it, so it's a very even cook. So it might need less time. And these look. They're going to be, when they bake up, they're going to be a bit more pretty looking. They're always a little, it's just like our pretzels. They're always a little dimply when you take them out. That's the water. But once it bakes up, it expands and it'll have a nicer look on them. It's the same thing with the pretzels. The pretzels, when you take them out, they look dimply. But when you bake them up, then they're gorgeous. Okay, we're going to pop these over because you want to do 30 seconds on each side. And you don't have to worry about, like, if I'm touching them with like a true like sourdough, you don't have to worry about them completely deflating like a yeast spread. They typically keep their nice little form fairly good. I just want to make sure they have room to breathe. Okay. And the batch that we prepped the dough yesterday, and it made 8, although these are going to be good size because we want them for sandwiches, but you could definitely make them smaller for like the mini bagel. There we go. Yes.
You have a question. Do you think these are easier to make or pretzels easier?
These are easier because the shaping is not that hard, and most of the time that this comes with is just like wait time. You make this. It's just like with sourdough. It's wait time. Okay. Now we're almost there. While we're doing this, I'm gonna prep. We're gonna start over here with the ones that already have it. So I'm gonna put a nice little bed of everything bagel seasoning on here, and we're gonna take it. They're sticky when they come out, and we're just gonna cover the top with it. So I'm gonna do 2 of each flavor. Let's get these guys out since they're done. So with the oil, with the honey and bath on here and thing, it leaves the dough sticky. So you don't have to do anything extra to get the spices to stick on. There we go. So this is my everything bagel one. I'm gonna move this out of the way since we are done with it. And now we're done with the everything bagel one. So I don't want to make a lot of dishes because nothing. Now, our next one we're going to do is we're going to use a little bit of Parmesan cheese. So I'm going to spread it out and I'll redo it. And then this is everything Italian seasoning. So it has just like all those like delicious seasonings that you get when you have like a pizza or like a Italian bread. It's got a little kick to it because it does have some red peppers in it. There we go. And then we're going to stick it on. And then I'm just going to do a little extra pickup on it. So this is our Italian one. Kind of go around just like if you were doing like sprinkles on a muffin or not on a cupcake. There we go.
So like flour sprinkles.
Yeah, yes, like flour sprinkles because everybody uses dried flowers for sprinkles. Okay, and then our last one, this is a little bit of our savory one. And so I'm going to smush a little bit of butter. We're going to get a little bit dirty here with this one because you want to make that crunch kind of flavor. You know, when you go to, what is it, Panera, and they have those cinnamon crunch style bagels. I love them. So we're going to put a little bit of flour in this. This is to kind of give you that hold everything together. So about a tablespoon of flour. And then we're going to use some brown sugar and cinnamon, which we're all going to be using. So I'm just going to grab it from over here. And then a little bit of sugar. And okay, so I've got over here. Sorry, I did like a long stretch with it. So I've got my cinnamon, my brown sugar, flour, and regular sugar here. And this is where you just got to kind of use your fingers to crumble it together. And what happens is when the butter melts in the oven, this is going to create kind of a nice cinnamon crust on top of your bagel. And so you want to get it all together. I always say this is the best way to do it. I mean, you could get a fork out, but you really want to smush it together. There we go. Okay. And now I'm going to take my bagels here. We'll do a little push down, and then I'm going to just really put this on top. There we go. So it can melt and create this delicious cinnamon crunch bagel that you like what Panera has. Those are just my favorite ones. They also put like cinnamon chips in the middle of it. But I just like to do one simple dough for everything. Put all of that on there. There we go. Perfect. So now here we've got our bagels made up. We did 4 different varieties. We've got our everything, our Italian cheese, our cinnamon crunch, and of course plain. I'm going to wash my hands and then we're going to pop these in the oven. Okay. So I have my oven preheated to 425. And because these are sourdough, they do need a little bit longer to bake than if you were to use a yeast one, because you want to make sure you cook it all the way through, otherwise they'll be gummy. So these need about 20 to 25 minutes. And we're gonna let them cook up beautifully in there. I'm gonna set my timer for about 22 so I don't forget about them, and then we can take a peek and see if they need a little bit more time. Okay, let me put my lids on my spices here, because if I don't, I will knock them over. Okay, and then I'm just gonna clean this cutting board off, because we're gonna be using it to slice up some onions in just a little bit. But let's come over here and we're gonna make our cookies. So we're gonna make both. So I'm taking one batch of cookies, and half will be chocolate chip and half will be white chocolate macadamia nut, so that you can have a little bit of variety in there. You know, we're a big family, so on most days we feed 9 people, sometimes 11 when my niece and nephew are here. So we definitely go through a lot of like snacks and cookies. So I know it feels like we're baking all the time, but most things last like a day here. So we're gonna make a batch of cookies, and this will give us 2 flavors in one. So I don't have to make 2 batches of cookies. So we're gonna start with 2 sticks of softened butter, so room temperature, because this creams the best. Now these cookies, my trick with having the best cookies is that they have to sit and chill in your fridge for a while. So we're making them for now, but we can bake them up tonight, or you can bake them up in a day or two. I will say my favorite is either like between 6 and 24 hours after it. After 24 hours, if you cook them up like 2 days later, they have more of a caramely flavor to it, because the butter and the sugar have like blended really well. But this gives you those like perfect cookies that are chewy, not crunchy, which I love. Okay, so I just did a quick cream on my butter, and now we are going to add in 3/4 a cup of sugar and 3/4 a cup of brown sugar. Okay, so it's the same amount, but you want 3/4 of each. There we go. I'm a fan of, with my cookies, I like them to be chewy. I don't like them to be crunchy. So this is like a trick that I learned. It was funny, from my sister's mother-in-law. So this is like through the grapevine, but she always made the best cookies. Growing up, we'd like go and visit them. They were just really nice. I love them. Like my sister's husband, I've known him since I was like 7 or 8 years old, because I am the youngest of 10. So big age difference. But he was like a regular brother to me, and their parents were always so nice and let us in. But she made the best cookies ever. And so that was one of her tricks. It was always to chill the dough, so that they don't like spread out too fast, so you have a nice and chewy center. So we need 3/4 of a cup. So this is a half cup measuring things, and you want to firmly press down. There we go. Because with brown sugar, because it is moister, it flakes out more. So you got to firmly press it down to make sure you're getting the accurate amount. And we're going to cream these 2 together. I'm going to wash my hands real quick. There we go. And we want to make sure they get completely mixed together before we do the next step, which is why I always say room temperature butter is the best, because it creams the best. So I'm going to just take my silicone spatula here, and then you're just going to knock out any of the butter, and then you're just going to slide off the sides of the bowl, because it likes to stick there in the beginning, and you want to make sure everything gets creamed together nicely for our cookies. And so while we're going to do this, while our bagels are baking in the oven for our lunch today. So we're going to cream the sugar together. This is going to be the base for our 2 cookies, our chocolate chip cookie and our white chocolate macadamia nut. Well, the nice thing about these 2 cookies is they use a very similar base. So I can use one base dough, and then I can mix in ingredients on the side, and they'll be delicious. Okay, we almost got a good cream on it. You can see my dough is really forming together. Perfect. And this is what you want. You want essentially a cream is when the sugars and the butter have come together and it looks like it's forming a dough. So we've got our creamed butter and our sugar. Now we're going to add in 2 eggs. I always use large or extra large eggs when I'm baking. A lot of recipes don't specify that, but I always feel like when I'm at the store, the large or extra large are the better bargain, and I've always bought them. So those are what I use. And we're gonna cream our eggs in. Oh yes, when I don't was it a month or two ago when we had in January when we had that egg shortage? I could not get eggs anywhere. I had a little stockpile in my house that I was like, oh, this will get me through the slump because I typically buy 5 dozen at a time, and that lasts us about 2 weeks. And I could not find them. Every grocery store I went to, they were sold out, or they would limit you to 1 dozen. And I was like, 1 dozen won't feed my kids breakfast. I mean, I have 5 kids, and if each kid has, 2 eggs, and then my teenage boy is like 5 eggs, he's always hungry. But it was that. And so I needed eggs for recipes. And so I switched out and I used a little bit of quail eggs, which were way more expensive. But I was like, we're doing light egg recipes, 1 egg, because that's equal to 3 quails. They turned out great. They worked the exact same way, just weren't as budget friendly. And of course, the kids were very excited because they were like, "Ooh, quail eggs! What are these?" I did try to fry up a quail egg. It was really hard because it's so little and it just didn't, want to stick well or to the pan and flip. Okay, we are going to use 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. There we go. And we're going to cream this in as well. And then our next 2 ingredients, we're going to add a teaspoon of baking soda and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. There we go. And the way I do it, because I am not a fan of sifting flour and salt and baking soda together. To me, that's just 1 step that's unnecessary. I will make sure I add these 2 ingredients to our creamed mixture before I add in the flour. That way it will get evenly dispersed and I don't have to sift stuff because sifting is just, who has time for that? So we've got 1 tablespoon here, or not tablespoon, 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Do not add a tablespoon or you will have cake instead of cookies. So 1 teaspoon of baking soda and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I use salted butter, but if you were using unsalted butter, I would want to increase that to 1 teaspoon of salt because you really need it in the cookies. Otherwise, they get to be too sweet. I find this with salt just kind of balances everything out, and it's a flavor enhancer. We're going to mix these in, and we just want to make sure they get mixed in well. Now I'm going to just take my spatula before we add the flour and just make sure I have no butter or sugar that is stuck down on the sides of my bowl because I want everything to mix together. There we go. And you could do this with a hand mixer if you wanted to. If you did it by hand, it's a lot harder to cream the butter and sugar, but a hand mixer works well instead of a stand. For cookies, I always use my stand mixer because there is a lot of mixing. Now, our next thing, we are going to add in 2 1/4 cups of flour. And we just use all purpose. So 1 and 2. And then now we need a 1/4 cup.
Yeah, question, was it baking soda or baking powder?
Baking soda. So for the cookies, you want baking soda because they are going to be that with the eggs, the only rising agent in here. So baking soda and 1 teaspoon of it. And now we're going to cream these together. And we're going to mix them until they're formed back into a nice kind of thicker dough. And we're used 1 1/4 cups or 2 1/4 cups of flour. And I'm just using regular all-purpose flour. You don't want to use a bread flour because then you're going to have a kind of a chewier one. You want a little bit of a crunch on the outside, but a chewy inside. And you don't want to use cake flour because that makes a really fluffy cookie. Okay. We've got our cookie dough all creamed together. Right there, lovely. And what I'm going to do now is we're going to lower it. And then I've got 2 bowls here because we're going to mix our ingredients in there on the side, and then we'll put them in the fridge to chill. So I'm going to use my spatula and take all of this good stuff off. This is where all my kids come in to help. They're all like, oh, can I help you right now that you've made the dough and it's ready to be licked? That's when they come in to help me. You got to make sure you get it all off. No cookies go to waste. But one thing that is nice about this dough is because I chill it, you don't have to necessarily bake it up all at one time. A lot of times I'll bake up just a sheet at a time and then just bake up them fresh every single day because nothing is better than freshly baked cookies versus ones that are a day old. Okay, so I've got here, just making sure I've got all the ingredients, things, and we're just going to divide this dough in half. We're going to put half in one bowl and then half in the other, and then we're going to mix in our chocolate chips and then our white chocolate chips and our macadamia nuts for our 2 cookies. I've always wondered what it would be like to just bake up these cookies without chocolate chips in them. One of my sons, who's not the biggest fan of chocolate, he was always like, can you make a chocolate chip cookie without the chocolate chips? And I'm like, I've never done it before because that sounds a little crazy, but I always wonder what it would be like. And I almost wonder, would the dough even hold together as well without the chips in it? Okay, these are about, I want to say, fairly even. Let's get all of this dough out of here. Okay. I think those are good. Put this in the sink. Now, I like my macadamia nuts or my cookies with a lot of nuts in it. So I'm going to use about a cup of macadamia nuts for my half batter mix. That way you get a good nut in every single bite. Nothing is worse when you get one of those cookies and they have like 1 nut in the whole cookie. So we're going to use this whole bag, which is a cup. And they are already like cut in half, so they're not full. But if you had the full macadamia nuts, you'd want to break them, like chop them up until they're either halves or quarters, because you don't want them to be too big in your cookie. And then we're only going to use half a bag of white chocolate chips. So just about a cup of white chocolate chips. And a bag typically has around 2 cups in it. So I'm just going to do the good old fashioned pinch it in half and pour out. So it's not an exact amount, but it is about the right thing. So here, and then we're just going to take our spatula and kind of smush everything in and incorporate it. And then we'll put it in our fridge to chill.
You have a question? Why is it always white chocolate chips with macadamia?
You know what? I don't know. I guess whoever created it just must have loved white chocolate chips. And that's why, I've never had it with regular one, but I've had chocolate chip cookies with like pecans and walnuts in it. So I'm not sure. Maybe white chocolate chips are rather sweet. And so I wonder if they just work well with the macadamia nuts. But I'm not sure. Maybe I'll have to try it with the chocolate chips one day.
I think it's because macadamia nuts are white too.
Yeah, I guess so. It can all look like that, blend together. I guess that is a smart idea. The white chips with the white nuts. I can see it. Okay, I want to make sure. These keep jumping out. There we go. Just want to make sure I got it all mixed together. But do you see how I just love to have lots of chips and whatnot in my cookies. I don't want it to be skimped out, but we have a really good ratio there of nuts to chips. Another nut scraping out. There we go. Which, yes, I guess makes them slightly more expensive when you add a lot to it. But if you're having a cookie, you want to have the cookie done well. So we're going to have that left over, and we'll cover it with some press and seal, and then we will refrigerate it. I'll bake these up tonight, but you want the dough to be cold enough that it is firm to touch. So at least an hour chilling. I typically will, when I make them in the morning, and then we cook them up in the evening. And then we're going to add about a cup of chocolate chips to ours.
About how many cookies does each bowl make?
Each bowl makes about, I want to say, 20 cookies, maybe 15, because I do each bowl will make one big sheet, or my big sheet, which is a sheet and a half, and I do 3 rows of 5 because I give them size, but they're good size cookies. There we go. So we've added in about a cup of chocolate chips. I use semi-sweet. I love Ghirardelli. It's my favorite brand of them. And but you can use any one you like. I know Toll House is a pretty good one, and I've also had Lily's, but I feel like Ghirardelli is just what I always had growing up, and so I love them. And we're gonna just smush all of these chocolate chips in. I've got a little bit of a dry throat. I've had this little cold that has been lingering on. Oh, hey, Evie. Looks like today was early release. And you want to come help me with the cookies? Yeah, we're making cookies. So our school, you want to smash the chocolate chips in for me? I'll hold the bowl. Her school got out early. Elementary school gets out like early every other Wednesday. And I forgot today was an early release. Well, lucky you. Mm-hmm. That means you get a little bit of cookies.
It's the last one before TCAP.
The last one before TCAP.
It's sad.
I know, that is sad. But guess what? School's going to be out in like a month and a half. So it's almost summer.
Is that one with white chocolate?
White chocolate chip and macadamia nuts. Those are my favorite cookies. Okay. So we get all of it off. Do you need to be my taste tester? Of course. That is the one job every kid happily takes. Is it delicious? Okay, we're going to cover them with, I use press and seal, saran wrap, anything you want. If you have containers with lids, put them on there. You just want to seal them off so that they don't dry out. And then we'll put them in our fridge to chill. And we'll bake these tonight. Okay. There we go. So we've got our cookies ready. Let me give my hands a quick wash.
You got called out for your bougie chocolate chips.
I know. My husband says they're bougie too, and I get it. They totally are. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm a bit of a chocolate snob, but it's because I grew up eating European chocolate and not American chocolate. So my mom, both my parents are not, like, they're from different countries. And so the only chocolate they would eat were the bougie chocolate. And they've kind of made me a chocolate snob because of it. And if you've actually researched into like Hershey's and how they made the chocolate originally, it's not as pleasant. But no, I know I'm bougie. You know, everybody has their faults there.
No question. What temperature and how long do they bake?
So you'll bake them at 375 for 9 minutes. So they bake up really quick, and you're going to take them out when they don't look like they're done, because they will cook longer on the tray, and you want them to have a nice chewy. So they are cooked, but they're going to look a little wet, and that's the perfect one. We'll bake them up tonight so you'll see them. But let's make our focaccia for tonight's dinner, because our bagels are almost done. They have about 3 minutes.
You have a question? How many kids do you have?
I have 5 kids. Evie's laughing because we always have a big family, and she always, like, when we go to the grocery store, because we typically leave with 2 carts, she's always like, we have a big family, because we're always buying so many groceries.
I have 3 brothers and 1 sister.
Yeah, she's saying she has 3 brothers and 1 sister. Okay, we're gonna start with our for our focaccia.
One last quick question: where do you find that brand in the chocolate chip?
So yeah, just in the grocery store. They typically on your shelf in the baking aisle will have all the chocolate chips there. So Publix, Kroger, even Target, you can get them from. I'm sure you can probably buy them on Amazon because you can buy like a house on Amazon nowadays. We're gonna add 100 grams of sourdough starter to our bowl. There, just about. You got tickle in there. It's 100 grams. And now we need some water. So let me just get my water running. I like to warm it up because I find that warm water really incorporates the dough better. Ooh. And then I got my beautiful Pyrex things. I love my the liquid measuring dishes. I feel like growing up, they always told you dry measurements and liquid measuring containers were different. They had different amounts. They don't. They have like the same amount. Okay. So we're going to add in 400 grams of water. Hopefully this tickle in my throat goes away. Let me get a drink here. Okay. So 400 grams of water to our 100 grams of sourdough starter. Now, it doesn't have to have been fed like in the last 4 to 8 hours, but you do want to make sure your starter's been fed in the last 24 hours for this. So you don't want it to be dead. And we need 400 grams of water. Perfect. Which is about 1.5 to 2 cups. We're going to give this a nice little stir. Make sure it all incorporates. And this recipe is kind of similar to my sourdough bread recipe. But focaccia is a little bit different. You don't need as much rising time for it. So this is one that we'll do like a rise. We'll punch it down, then we'll shape it into the traditional rectangle on the baking dish for it. Okay, now we're going to add in about 10 grams of salt, which is the same as like 2 teaspoons. So I'm just going to eyeball it. And I hear our bagels beeping, so let's go check those out, see if they're done. Hopefully they are done. But they take between, 20 and 25 minutes, depending. Oh, beautiful. Look at these gorgeous. They've got a nice kind of golden brown crust. That's from our honey bath. That's what makes them. You can see our cinnamon sugar crunch ones. That cinnamon glaze has just melted over. And then these are just beautiful. So this is our Italian herbs and cheese. You can see our Parmesan on it. Here's our everything bagel. This is our cinnamon crunch. And these are our plain ones. I'm going to go turn the timer off on my oven because it's going to beep at me until I do. But these are just gorgeous. They're probably really hot too. But I want to see if I can show you guys the bottom. Look at that. Perfect. And this is just that honey glaze from our when we boiled it in, and it has a nice, I don't know if you can hear it, a nice crunchy crust to it. Okay, so let's get our focaccia up, and then we can make our sandwiches. For today, we're going to do salami, pepperoni, kind of like an Italian style sandwich. So we're going to add 500 grams of bread flour. Let me just get a bowl here. Sometimes my bowl will get too heavy, and then I have to do it in another bowl. Okay, so 500 grams of unbleached bread flour. You got to make sure it's unbleached because the bleaching process kills off all the good bacteria that is needed for sourdough to rise. There we go. There's about 300. Okay. And then we're just going to dump this bread flour into our mix. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. And then I'm going to use my good old dough whisk. Dough whisks work so much better than a spoon because they allow the flour to really pass through it so it doesn't clump up. Here we go. So for our focaccia dough, it's going to be a little bit more damp and wet now, but as it sits out and rises, it will dry off. So it's a higher hydration bread. But we're going to do essentially the same things that we do with our sourdough bread. We're going to do our stretch and folds, and we'll do a little bulk rise on the countertop. And then once it's gotten like poofed up a little bit, you'll stretch it out into a big rectangle on a baking sheet, and then you let it rise again. And then you get to do the fun little bubble fingers down in oil and season it. But we'll do that at tonight's stream.
How's that go?
It's like a thriller dance. That's what you do. That's, you know what? That's what you got to do. You got to do the thriller dance when you make it. Okay, let's get our lunch together. These are going to be so delicious for breakfast. Okay, we got some salami, havarti, pepperoni. We need a little bit of red onion because that just will add to the whole Italian flavor. So I'm just going to do one slice off because we don't need much. We'll take this whole outer shell off because it will be chewy. We don't want that. And then look, this is perfect for 2 bagels. Now, what bagel do you want for yours? Do you want plain Italian herbs and cheese? Italian, that's what I wanted. So we've got these here. Let me see. My bread knife. So these are nice and hot. So we got it, but they're perfect for a bagel sandwich. So I'm going to cut this in here. I'm going to cut off the top. I know the indentation in the middle is gone, but look at the nice bubbles in here. Perfect. And this is straight up sourdough, no yeast. Okay. So we've got our things. We're going to put a nice layer while they're nice and hot. Some havarti cheese down because it's got that nice mellow, creamy, cheesy flavor. Beautiful. And then we're going to do a layer of salami. And now, since these aren't grilled cheeses, you don't need to go light on them if you don't want to. So we'll do 5 on here. And 5 on this one. And then I'll do a little less of pepperoni on mine because I'm not a huge pepperoni fan, but I do find that for an Italian sandwich or a bagel witch, it just is perfect. Like, it's a nice little spiciness. So we're going to put a couple slices of pepperoni. And then I know we'll put a lot on this one because my husband loves pepperoni. He's like the pepperoni monster. Like, the shakaroni was designed for him. There we go. And then we're going to do some red onions. You want to use red onions. You don't want to use like a white onion or anything like that. They're too astringent. Here we go. Perfect. And then do you like cream cheese or no cream cheese? Okay, that's what I thought. I like special herby cream cheese or whatnot. This right here, we're gonna put some chopped spicy peppers on it. So just a small amount, kind of give it another little kick. And no spicy ones on yours. We'll switch it. Okay, just a small amount on each one because these are hot, but it will go really well with it. And then we're going to do our last little layer of cheese on the top because you want to sandwich it between the two. There we go. And now we have our Italian melts, our Italian bagel sandwiches. We did havarti cheese, salami, pepperoni, red onions, a little bit of spicy peppers, and another layer of cheese on our homemade sourdough bagels that were super simple and made. We made the dough last night, and then you just let it rise on your countertop until the morning. And then we shaped them and we did the rise again. But again, we got our plain ones left, everything, and our cinnamon crunch ones. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do kind of live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making for our family. Also, if you want to remake these recipes, you can always find the link on our page where we upload all of our videos and post recipe cards and whatnot. So you can always check there for more of our stuff. Well, thanks again. Don't forget to like and subscribe.